pretty much always travel solo during my canoe trips, but this trip was a little bit different. I was joined by my friend Dan. We tackled a really long 85-kilometer loop down the Tim River in Algonquin Park. We double carried the portages as well, so that 85 kilometers quickly turned into more than 100 kilometers with all of the extra walking. I had this specific route on my radar for the past few years, and every time I planned the itinerary, I was giving myself between 8 to 10 days for the trip. We decided to do it in 5 days. We had some long, grueling days on the water, with countless beaver dams, muddy portages, and the extreme summer heat to deal with. But we were treated to some spectacular scenery, gorgeous campsites, and for the first time in more than 20 years of canoe tripping, I finally saw a bear in the backcountry. 2 of them, actually. I can't even describe how happy I was. Join us for a 5-day, 100-kilometer Tim River Big Trout Loop in Algonquin Park. Dan and I were driving up separately, and he needed to pick up his rental canoe, so I decided to get on the water early and figured I'd let him catch up with me later in the day. He was traveling with a double blade paddle, and he had a lot less weight in his boat, so he was going to be moving at a much faster pace than me. Elo and I set out from the Magnetawan Lake access point shortly after the sunrise. Not that you can really tell, since the thick overcast was blocking the sun anyways. The first 2 portages leading into Ralph Bice Lake had a few other groups on the trail, but they weren't too busy. Once I set out onto Ralph Bice, there was peace and quiet. Alright, baby. You're a good girl. Stay. Stay. Good girl. Good girl. It's just a log, Elo. It's just a log. Nothing exciting. Still got a long day ahead of us. Elo, that's just a log up there. It's just a log. It's okay. Dan caught up with me in the middle of the day. We spent just a few minutes catching up, then continued onwards. We had a few long portages on the trip, but the 1.7 kilometer on the first day was the longest of them. By the end of day 1, we had done 2.7 kilometers portaging, or more than 8 kilometers if you want to count the double carrying. Well, it's hot with the sun. What did you think about that portage? That was easy for you. That was easy peasy for Elo. We arrived at the Tim River in the late afternoon, just as the sun was getting low in the sky. Our permit for the evening was for Little Trout Creek. It's a single campsite booking, which meant we knew exactly which site would be waiting for us. But first, we needed to get across some of the infamous Tim River beaver dams. Stay. Elo, stay. Come, this way. Hey, hey, hey. This way. This way. Good girl, good girl. Hey, come. Elo. Hey, hey, sit. Hey, stay. Which way do you want to go down? Elo, stay. Do you want to just haul forward and down here like this? Oh, this is risky business.
We're worried about these sticks on the bottom.
Oh, this is super questionable. Can you twist to this way so I can push this out?
What do you want?
Can you pull back a tiny bit? Okay, and then, yeah. Okay, now push forward. There you go. Okay, wait, let me come back. Yeah, so if it wasn't obvious by now from all that screeching, I should have just unloaded the boat, carried it over, and then loaded it again. That's how I usually need to do it when I'm traveling solo anyways. That was more hassle than it was worth. Ready?
On the plus side, I think mine's going to be a lot easier.
Stay. Stay. My shoes are already off. After more than 8 hours of travel, we finally made it to our campsite right before the sun crossed the shoreline. We quickly set up camp, filtered some clean water, had dinner, and got a fire going. What a day. Our first night happened to be the peak of the Perseids meteor shower, so we spent some time enjoying the show from the campsite's sandbank at the front shoreline before heading to bed. Good morning from day 2. Day 2 was going to be one heck of a long day. We were paddling more than 20 kilometers on the Tim River to get into Shippagoe Lake, our destination for the evening. I mentioned earlier that Dan was moving faster than me on the water, and since I wake up super early anyways, I decided to get a head start. He'd catch up at some point later in the day. One of the downsides of starting the day without Dan was that I needed to cross the beaver dams all by myself. Unfortunately, no, Elo does not provide any help. It's actually pretty difficult with Elo. Leaving her in the boat adds extra weight, making it more challenging to carry over, and if I take her out of the boat, then I need to supervise her to make sure she doesn't drink any of that sketchy beaver dam water. But Elo's a good girl. We were able to get across the few beaver dams without too much trouble. Let's go. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, how about that again? It's morning of day 2 on the Tim River. It's almost 9 o'clock. The day is still very early. We have a very long day ahead of us. We've got 2 portages till we connect back with the Tim, then a long stretch, and then 1 more portage before getting into Shippagoe. It's gonna feel like 30, no wind, no clouds. Focus is on getting Elo to the campsite in one piece. We kept moving along the Tim River until we reached the start of the portages, the 280 meter and the 450 meter. The portages had thick overgrowth, steep hills, and some really narrow ledges to walk across. It was a little bit dangerous, especially with Elo tethered to my waist. Honestly, those portages kinda sucked. Let's go. Good girl, Elo. You're doing so good. I just finished the second of 3 portages of the day. There's barely any shade. I just found a little rock to get some shade. She's very clearly very tired. I'm trying to get her to just relax before we get back in the sun. So we have now a 3-hour paddle until our last portage of the day. And it's super hot. No clouds. Basically no clouds. I know I'm pointing at a cloud as I speak, but basically no clouds. Super hot, no wind. So this was the day I was most nervous about with Elo in the canoe for this long stretch that we're about to do. So I'm taking a break right now, letting her cool down. I have water. I'm going to keep a water bowl up front with her. I brought a little fan, so I'm going to try and mount that somehow and turn it on so it faces her. And hope that's enough. The wildest thing just happened. See this tall grass? I'm paddling on the Tim, and from the side shoreline, literally right beside me, a moose just pops up from the grass. It was crazy. So the moose was lying down, probably sleeping, taking a nap, and then I must have startled it. It stood up, and by the time it stood up, it was 2 feet away from me, beside me. So I just kept paddling, I needed to give it some space and distance and not hang around too close, even though that would have made for amazing pictures. Gotta respect the wildlife. So I paddled up ahead, and then I stopped once I was a safe distance ahead, and it stared me down for like 30 seconds, and then it just plopped back down on the grass, and it disappeared. Like it was clearly napping, and I startled it when I paddled past. So like I was paddling here, and it was right there. I didn't get any photos, no videos, but that's okay because as long as the moose is happy and undisturbed, that's what matters. And Elo was amazing. Like, she just saw the moose pop up, she watched it, she didn't bark, she didn't whine, she just stayed like this, just stayed in silence. Elo, you're such a good girl. You're looking back for the moose? Yeah, that's where it was over there. So I didn't get any good photos of this moose encounter, and now I feel guilty sharing that story without any photos, so I'll quickly share some other moose photos that I took during my other trips throughout the season. And don't worry, because the bear encounter at the end of this trip will more than make up for it. But for now, let's get back to the Tim River. One of the nice things about being alone in the backcountry is that no one can make fun of you when you look absolutely ridiculous. Like when I draped a t-shirt over my head for some extra protection from the sun. Wait, hold on. How did this clip make it into the video? Damn it, I knew I shouldn't have let Elo do the editing on this one. Shortly after the 450-meter portage is a campsite on the Tim River. This was going to be my last chance that I'd have to pull over for a bathroom break and a shade break before a long 3-hour stretch of paddling. Thankfully, the campsite wasn't occupied. But not thankfully, there was an insane amount of bugs. I only lasted for a few minutes before I couldn't tolerate it any longer. The sun was scorching hot, and Elo and I both could have used an extended break, but we had no choice but to get back on the water. Alright, I'm all set up for the long paddle. Enough water for Elo. I got a rechargeable fan for Elo. And water, fan. I think you'll be okay, Elo. I was in the middle of the water for hours with no relief from the scorching heat, and this was after the portages and beaver dams from earlier in the day. I was totally exhausted, but I still had one final portage for the day, a short 120 meter, before arriving to Shippague Lake. Good girl. Just finished the final portage of the day. Next stop, Shippague Lake. Goodbye, Tim River. I don't think I'll miss you. That's the opening right there in the body of the lake. We're almost there, Elo. A real final stretch, Elo. Now, this next chapter of the story is probably going to have some divided opinions, but I'm going to share it anyways. Shippague Lake has 2 campsites, but the park only issues 1 permit for the lake. This means that Dan and I should be the only people camping on the lake, and we should get to choose which of the 2 campsites we want. But when I arrived to Shippague Lake, I saw one of the campsites occupied. It was the nicer of the 2 as well. This meant one of 2 things. Either the people were breaking the rules and camping off permit, or there was an emergency that prevented them from continuing with their route. Either way, I wanted to find out what was going on. If they were breaking the rules, I'd ask them to leave the site. But if there was some sort of emergency, I'd want to offer my help and assistance. The 2 men admitted to intentionally camping off permit, and thankfully they packed up and left the campsite right away. Now, to clarify, I would never approach someone else's campsite unless it was a single permit lake, like in this scenario. This is the only way that you can know with 100% certainty that the group is off permit. Also, if they became defensive or confrontational in any way, I would have removed myself from the situation. I would not put myself into a potentially violent situation, especially in the backcountry. And most importantly, I also want to mention that sometimes it actually is okay to camp off permit. For example, if there's extreme weather, or if someone in your group gets sick or injured, if it's an actual emergency, you should always prioritize your own safety. Anyways, Dan finally caught up to me right after that whole ordeal. Hello. It's been a pretty ridiculous day. Went from Little Trout Creek on the Tim River to Shippagoo. It's 7 hours on the map, but it's 30 degrees outside with no clouds and no wind. And I have ELO, so a lot of breaks and stuff like that. It took about 8 hours, which I was expecting longer, to be honest, but 8 hours under the sun, beaver dams, it was just a brutal day. I'm toast. I am currently having one of my favorite meals, the Forever Young mac and cheese, and it is leaking out the bottom, so I put the whole thing into a Ziploc so that it leaks into the Ziploc. Elo's chilling behind me. She is just as pooped as I am. Dan is out on the water, filling his water to drink. Yeah, I'm tired, but this is a beautiful sight, beautiful lake, beautiful day. Nothing to complain about, other than the fact that it was just a really freaking hard day. But it's okay. Get some food in my belly and I'll be good to go. Despite having another 8-hour day on the water, I decided to go for an evening paddle to watch the sunset and to check out the second campsite on Shippagoo Lake. Dan and I spent the rest of the evening sitting beside the fire and enjoying our beautiful campsite. The moon and the stars were spectacular, and there was even a brief moment with some really faint northern lights. It was a great way to end a very challenging day. Day 3 was going to be the shortest day of the trip, and most of the day was going to be portaging without too much paddling. So unlike the first 2 days, I didn't feel the need to get a head start on the water. I decided to wait for Dan so we could start the day together. But that doesn't change the fact that I wake up super early regardless. I had lots of time to kill, so I spent the morning enjoying the breathtakingly beautiful scenery on Shippagoo Lake. Dan had a bit of a muddy start at that first portage. Sometimes the mud sinks in a little bit deeper than you think. Good job, Evo. Good girl. After double carrying the 1 kilometer portage, we took a short break on Blue Lake. The lake was quite pretty. It was another scorching hot day, so I wasn't opposed to spending a few minutes in the shade while soaking in the beauty. Next up was the 850 meter into Big Trout Lake, which was our destination for the evening. Hey, wait, this isn't Algonquin. But don't skip, this isn't an ad. Well, kind of. I just want to take 20 seconds to tell you that if you're planning a trip to Algonquin Park, you have to check out my website Algonquin and beyond. There are more than 50 extremely detailed trip reports, along with super helpful resources like this complete guide to renting canoes, or this article with everything you need to know about bears in the park. Become a member and get access to more than 750 backcountry campsite reports, along with 360-degree video tours of every campground, including individual campsites. Plus, members get an automatic 10% discount at the online shop, where you can grab some sweet merch and framed photo prints. Alright, now let's get back to the video. When we arrived on Big Trout Lake, we headed straight to the nearby small island with 2 campsites. The northern side of the 2 was just okay, but when we saw the fire pit and the commanding view that the southern side offered, we knew it was going to be our home. The only issue is that there was practically no shade. Now, I know, everything looks shaded in this footage, but that's because these clips were taken in the evening when the sun was near the shoreline already. But the entire day was a scorcher, with basically nowhere to hide from the sun at the campsite. I knew it wasn't the smartest choice to stay at this site, but its views were just too beautiful to pass up. We got to camp at like 1:30, and we've just been lounging around since. It's a beautiful sight. Happy to be here, right, Elo? Yeah, you're a good girl. Dan is just out for a paddle. I think I can see him in the far distance. We sat by the fire for a few hours while watching the moon sink lower towards the shoreline, directly within view from the fire pit. It was another perfect evening in the backcountry of Algonquin Park. Day 4 was going to be yet another big travel day under a very hot sun, so once again, I decided to get an early start and let Dan catch up later. The day was going to start with around 3 hours of paddling, so Dan would likely catch up before we even hit our first portage. I enjoyed an absolutely stunning sunrise while packing up camp. Most impressive was that I was able to capture 2 sunspots in my photos. Getting to watch that awesome sunrise from the incredible campsite view was such a special way to start the day. Good morning. It's the morning of day 4. It's about 6:20. Trying to get a real early start on the day. It's supposed to be like 30 degrees with no sun, no clouds, and 4-kilometer gusts of wind. So basically no wind. And we have a long travel day ahead of us. So I'm going to try and get on the water by 7-ish. And this is my gear, ready to pack up. I made my way through Big Trout Lake and White Trout Lake while the sun was still low in the sky and the temperatures remained cool. Then I took a short break at one of the island campsites on White Trout Lake, and then a much longer break at one of the campsites on Grassy Bay. I was feeling really crappy. I'm pretty sure I had minor heat stroke. We just paddled big trout and white trout at the south end of White Trout. We stopped at one of the island campsites for a short little shade break and pee break. Yeah, this is the campsite. And then towards the landing this way. And my canoe is still here. We are now taking our second break at a campsite on Grassy Bay. It's a nice campsite. I've been here before. I was struggling pretty hard for the rest of the day. We still had to paddle McIntosh Creek, then double carry 2 portages, then cross McIntosh Lake, and then do one final portage before arriving on Timberwolf Lake. Sprinkle in a few beaver dams along the way, and I was not a happy camper. Although I did start to feel a little bit better towards the end of the day when the sun was lower in the sky and wasn't as strong. Ooh, that's a nice picture of you, Dan, with the clouds in the background and the islands. Okay, Elo, let's get you cooled off. Good girl. We're not going to go for a big swim. We're just going to cool you off, okay? Okay, that's good. I think you're cool. I always think you're cool, though. About ready to tackle the last portage of the day. McIntosh into Timberwolf. Including the campsite breaks, we traveled for 11 hours on day 4. I could not have been happier when we finally arrived to our campsite on Timberwolf Lake. It was the early evening, but there was still just enough sunlight to set up camp and relax for a few hours before watching the sunset through the trees. I made sure I got into my tent at a decent time. We had yet another long day ahead of us, and I desperately needed a good night's sleep.
Oh, sweet girl.
Okay, so here's the thing. It doesn't matter if I have heat stroke. It doesn't matter if I have a 10-hour day ahead of me. The only thing that matters is that Elo gets her cuddles in the morning. Every day starts with Elo cuddles, and that is a non-negotiable.
Hey, you're a good girl.
Even though we had a super long day ahead of us, we still took our time packing up camp and appreciating the beauty of our final morning in Algonquin Park. We got on the water at around 8:30 a.m. Soon after finishing our first portage, I spotted something moving on the distant shoreline. I immediately knew that what I spotted was either a moose or a bear. As we paddled closer, I realized it was a bear, and my excitement went through the roof. I had seen so many signs of bear, but I'd never actually seen one in person. And then finally, it happened. After 20 years, I finally saw a bear in the backcountry.
It's a bear.
I am so happy right now.
There's more than one.
After 10 minutes of watching, Dan paddled around a peninsula to get to a better vantage point. I wanted to join him, but it would actually be a really big risk for me. The paddle will take around 60 seconds, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when it comes to wildlife photography, that's actually a long time to not be holding my camera. But I decided to take the risk and I began paddling. Both bears had come into the water near the shoreline. Dan had kept a safe distance, but at one point the mother bear looked directly at him before slowly going back into the forest. Since I was paddling, I missed that prime moment with the mother bear looking at Dan, but I was able to get my camera in time to catch the cub exiting the water. Watching the bear set us back on our already long 10-hour day, but let's be honest, I would have spent an hour watching if the bears had let us. It's so rare to see bears in the backcountry, and even more rare for them to stick around for a full 15 minutes. We got so lucky, and I was so freaking happy. The rest of the day was spent portaging and paddling to get back to our cars. We had a total of 7 portages to double carry and more than 15 kilometers of paddling. and of course, more beaver dams. Okay, let's go. Good girl. Sit. Sit. Stay. It was another scorching hot day, but I made sure to drink plenty of water, wear tons of sunscreen, and obviously my fashionable head t-shirt thingy made a comeback. We stopped for very short breaks at almost every portage, but we didn't take any extended breaks in the day. During each of the short breaks, we sat in the shade for a few minutes and gave Elo some water. Most of the breaks were for Elo's sake, because it was another scorcher outside, but I was also coming off what was arguably the worst feeling day I've ever had in the backcountry, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't overexerting myself either. Sit. Let's go. Good girl. This way. This way. Good girl. Whew. Final stretch of the day. Heading towards Hambone and Magnetawan. Messy day. We made it back to our car shortly after 6 p.m. after spending 10 hours on the water. I loaded my soaking wet, beaver dam smelling gear into my trunk, strapped my canoe to the top of my car, changed into some dry clothes, and started the drive home. The trip had finally come to an end. It had been a long time since I've done a trip as challenging as this one, but I felt very accomplished by the end of it all. We had extremely long travel days, countless beaver dams, and scorching hot sun to deal with the entire trip. It was type 2 fun, that's for sure. But with the faint northern lights, the Perseids meteor shower, the gorgeous campsites, the moose, the 2 bears, and all of the other beautiful scenery along the way, it was definitely a trip for the books. If you enjoyed this video, please consider dropping a like, comment, or share. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to read the full written trip report for this video, I'll leave a link in the video description below.